They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but justice, real justice, is something you prepare with care, like a recipe handed down through generations. When my only son forgot to invite me to my granddaughter's first birthday, I didn't just cry into my pillow. I took out my will, a pen, and changed the course of our family's future. What happened next would force everyone to finally see me, the woman they'd taken for granted for 68 years. If you're curious how I turned my heartbreak into strength after being excluded from my granddaughter's birthday, hit like and subscribe now. I'll take you through exactly how rewriting my will that night changed everything. The notification popped up on my phone while I was deadheading the roses in my garden. A tag from my daughter-in-law's Instagram account. Strange since Melissa rarely included me in anything. I wiped my soil-covered hands on my gardening apron and tapped the screen, squinting against the bright June sunlight to see the display. There they were, balloons in soft pinks and golds, a smiling baby with cake-smeared cheeks, and my son Michael looking proudly at his daughter. Happy first birthday to our precious Lily, surrounded by everyone who loves her most. The caption stung worse than the thorn that had pricked my thumb earlier. I scrolled through more photos. Michael's in-laws beaming, Melissa's college friends, even neighbors I'd met only once at their housewarming. But I wasn't there. I hadn't even known it was happening. I stood motionless in my garden in Fairfield, Connecticut, the phone heavy in my hand. My granddaughter had just turned 1, and I, Ruth Eleanor Blackwood, her only living grandparent, hadn't been invited to celebrate. Must have been an oversight, I whispered to myself, though I knew better. I'd raised a son who now lived just 20 minutes away, yet treated me like a distant relative, someone to be remembered on major holidays with obligatory visits that never lasted more than an hour. I called Michael immediately. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I waited 15 minutes and tried again. Same result. I texted. Just saw Lily's birthday photos. Was my invitation lost? Another hour passed. Nothing. By evening, when the shadows had grown long across my carefully tended lawn, my phone finally chimed. Mom, sorry I missed your calls. It was just a small thing at the house, very last minute. The timestamp on the Instagram post showed the party had been held yesterday. The professionally decorated cake and coordinated table settings told me this was anything but last minute. I see, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Will you be bringing Lily by soon so I can give her my gift? A pause. We're pretty busy this month. Maybe in a few weeks. After we hung up, I sat on my patio watching fireflies appear in the growing darkness. The same patio where I'd hosted every one of Michael's birthday parties until he left for college. Where I'd celebrated his law school graduation. Where I'd welcomed Melissa into our family despite her transparent disinterest in forming a relationship with me. Something shifted inside me that evening. A quiet tectonic movement of self-respect finally breaking through decades of accommodation. I am not a confrontational woman. My generation was taught to keep families together at all costs, to smooth over hurts, to be the peacemaker. After losing my husband, Robert, to cancer 12 years ago, I'd been especially careful not to burden Michael with my loneliness. I attended holidays at their house when invited, brought thoughtful gifts, offered to babysit Lily, though I was rarely taken up on it, and never criticized their parenting choices. I'd been a high school English teacher for 35 years before retiring. I'd shaped hundreds of young minds, many of whom still sent me Christmas cards or stopped me in the grocery store to tell me how much my class had meant to them. Yet, my own son couldn't be bothered to include me in his daughter's first birthday. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I got up and went to my home office. In the bottom drawer of my desk was my will, last updated after Robert died. Michael was the primary beneficiary of everything. This house that had been paid off decades ago, my retirement accounts, Robert's life insurance money I'd invested, and the lake house in New Hampshire that had been in my family for generations. I'd planned to leave it all to him without conditions, because that's what mothers do. But as I sat there in my nightgown, reading over the legal language, I realized I'd been living as though I were already dead. My feelings, my presence in their lives, an afterthought at best. The next morning, I called my attorney, Patricia Goldman. We'd been friends since our teaching days before she went back to law school in her 40s. Ruth, good to hear from you. How are you? I need to make changes to my will, I said, surprised by the resolve in my voice. Significant ones. When can I come in? Patricia's tone shifted slightly. Is everything all right? Yes and no. I'm fine health-wise, if that's what you're asking, but I've realized some things need to change. We set an appointment for the following day. Before hanging up, Patricia said, "Whatever it is, Ruth, I'm glad you're taking action. You've always put everyone else first." That afternoon, I drove to the mall, something I rarely did anymore, and bought myself a new dress. Not one of the sensible muted outfits I usually wore, but a bright blue linen dress that the young saleswoman said brought out my eyes. I had my hair cut as well, not just trimmed but actually styled. The woman working on me suggested lightening my gray with some blonde highlights. "Why not?" I said. On my way home, I stopped at a real estate office. The agent, a woman about Michael's age, looked surprised when I told her I wanted information about rental properties in town. "Are you looking to invest, Mrs. Blackwood?" "Possibly," I said. "And I'm also curious about what my own home might be worth in today's market." Her eyebrows rose. "You're Victorian on Maple Street. That's one of the finest houses in town. Are you considering selling?" "I'm considering my options," I replied. By the time I arrived home, I had a folder of information and a strange light feeling in my chest that took me a moment to identify. It was freedom. The recognition that at 68 years old, I was still very much alive and my life was still my own to shape. That evening, Michael finally called back. "Mom, Melissa mentioned you seemed upset about Lily's birthday. We really didn't think you'd want to drive all the way over for a kid's party." 20 minutes on the interstate. That was the insurmountable distance he was referencing. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "By the way, I've been meaning to discuss something with you. The lake house needs some work, and I'm trying to decide whether to renovate or sell." The lake house, where Michael had learned to swim, where he'd had his first kiss with a summer neighbor, where he'd proposed to Melissa because he thought the sunset over the water was romantic. "Sell." His voice sharpened. "Mom, you can't sell the lake house. It's been in the family forever." "Yes, it has since my grandfather built it in 1932. But it's just sitting there most of the year. I thought perhaps if you and Melissa and Lily used it more, you know how busy we are. We can barely get away for a weekend." "That's exactly my point," I said, surprised at how calm I felt. "Why keep it if no one enjoys it?" "We'll try to use it more," he said quickly. "Maybe next summer we can spend a few weeks there." "That would be lovely, though I'm still meeting with contractors next week to get estimates on repairs." After we hung up, I sat with my cup of tea and watched the evening news. For the first time in years, I felt as though I'd been seen, really seen by my son. It had taken the mere suggestion that something he viewed as his birthright might be slipping away. The next day at Patricia's office, I laid out my plans. She listened carefully, occasionally making notes. "Are you sure about this, Ruth? It's quite a change." "I've never been more certain," I said. "I've given and given, and it's time I recognize my own worth. If my family won't, then I must." She nodded slowly. "I'll drop the paperwork. It will take about a week." "Thank you, Patricia." I stood to leave, then paused. "Do you think I'm being petty?" Patricia removed her reading glasses and looked at me directly. "Ruth, I think you're finally asking for the respect you deserve. That's not petty. That's necessary." As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Melissa calling me directly for the first time in months. "Ruth, Michael mentioned you were thinking of selling the lake house," she said, skipping any greeting. "We were hoping to take Lily there for the 4th of July weekend. Would that work for you?" I smiled to myself as I unlocked my car door. What a wonderful idea. I'd love to see my granddaughter. "I'll be there, too, of course." A pause. "Oh, you'll be staying there as well?" "Naturally," I said. "It's my house." The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know about how the dynamics in our family were already beginning to shift, and I was just getting started. The 4th of July weekend arrived with perfect weather. I'd been at the lake house for 2 days already, airing it out, filling the refrigerator and preparing the small bedroom next to mine with a portable crib for Lily. I hung a mobile of colorful fish above it, something I'd crafted myself during the quiet evenings of the past month. Watching from the porch as Michael's BMW pulled into the gravel driveway, I felt an unusual calm. They were 3 hours later than they'd said they'd be. No call, no text. The old Ruth would have worried, then hidden her annoyance. The new Ruth simply sat in the Adirondack chair, lemonade in hand, observing their arrival with clear eyes. "Mom, sorry we're late," Michael called, waving as he got out of the car. Traffic was terrible. I nodded, not offering the immediate absolution he expected. Lily must be tired from being in her car seat so long. "Bring her up. I've got her room ready." Melissa emerged, designer sunglasses perched on her head, looking around the property with poorly disguised criticism. The lake house wasn't grand, just a well-built 3-bedroom cabin with a screened porch and a dock, but it had character and history that no amount of money could buy. "Hi," Ruth said, approaching the porch. "This is rustic, charming." "It's been in my family for 4 generations," I replied. Before that, it was just woods and shoreline. I watched her register my comment, the slight reminder that this place belonged to my lineage, not hers. Michael appeared with Lily in his arms, and despite everything, my heart melted. My granddaughter had grown so much since I'd last seen her 2 months ago. Her fine hair had thickened, and her eyes, Robert's eyes, took in everything with curious intensity. "There's my girl," I said, standing to approach them. Lily regarded me with the weariness babies reserve for people they should know but don't see often enough to remember. It stung, but I reached for her anyway. After a moment's hesitation, she came to me, perhaps responding to something ancient and instinctual, the connection between grandmothers and grandchildren that transcends familiarity. "Let me show you where you'll be staying," I said, leading them inside. Michael looked around with nostalgia. "It hasn't changed a bit. Some things are worth preserving," I said. I'd given them the larger bedroom downstairs while taking the master upstairs for myself. Lily's portable crib was set up in what used to be Michael's childhood room. I noticed Melissa's expression when she saw the accommodations, the simple furniture, the absence of air conditioning, the shared bathroom. "We usually stay at the Mountain View Resort when we come to New Hampshire," she mentioned casually. "They have a spa and room service." "The lake is our spa," I replied. "And I'm your room service this weekend." That first evening was a study in contrasts. While Michael seemed to relax into the familiar rhythms of the lake house, Melissa was constantly on her phone. Lily, freed from constraints, toddled around the living room, delighting in the basket of toys I'd prepared for her. I'd made a simple dinner: grilled fish, corn on the cob, a salad from vegetables I'd bought at a farm stand. As we ate on the porch, the lake before us turned golden in the setting sun. "So, Mom," Michael said, finally addressing what had brought them here. "You mentioned repairs needed on the house. What were you thinking?" I took a sip of my iced tea. "The roof needs work. The dock should be rebuilt. Basic maintenance that's been deferred too long." "That sounds expensive," Melissa interjected. "It is," I agreed. "Around 40,000 for everything. Money I'd rather put toward new experiences at this point in my life." Michael set down his fork. "What kind of experiences?" I smiled. "I'm considering a river cruise in Europe next spring. I've never seen the Rhine Valley." The look that passed between my son and his wife might as well have been subtitled. The money they assumed would eventually be theirs. All of it was apparently being spent by its actual owner, me. "That sounds nice," Michael managed. "But Mom, this place is so important to our family history." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "Which is why I'm surprised you haven't visited in over 3 years." The silence that followed was filled only by the sound of Lily banging a spoon against her high-chair tray. Later that night, after they'd gone to bed, I sat on the dock with my feet in the water. The moon cast a silver path across the lake, and I remembered sitting in this exact spot with Robert, planning our future together. We'd been so certain then about our love, about the family we'd create, about growing old together. Life had other plans. The next morning, we took Lily down to the small beach. I'd found Michael's old sand toys in the shed and washed them for her. Watching her little hands pat at the sand, her face intent with concentration, I felt a fierce love that made my chest ache. "She looks like you," I told Michael, who was applying sunscreen to his daughter's fair skin. He glanced up, surprised. "You think so? Everyone says she's all Melissa." "She has your determination," I said. "The way you used to build sandcastles for hours, getting every tower just right." Something flickered across his face, recognition perhaps of a connection he hadn't considered. Melissa was sitting under an umbrella, still on her phone. "Michael, we should think about heading back early tomorrow. I have that brunch with Caroline on Monday I need to prepare for." My son looked torn. "We just got here, Mel." "It's fine," I said. "You both lead busy lives. I understand." And I did understand more clearly than ever. I understood that my son had married a woman who valued status and convenience over family connection. I understood that he had adopted her values somewhere along the way. And I understood that unless something changed, Lily would grow up barely knowing me or the rich history that was her birthright. That evening, as fireflies began to appear over the lake, I brought out a photo album I'd assembled from old pictures stored in the lake house attic. "Look at this, Lily," I said, sitting her on my lap. "This is your daddy when he was just a little older than you." The photos showed Michael throughout his childhood at the lake, learning to fish with his grandfather, building a treehouse with Robert, graduating to the diving rock when he was 10. Each image was a testament to the memories this place had held for generations. Michael drifted over, drawn by the photos. "I haven't seen these in years," he said, sitting beside us. For a moment, as we turned the pages together, I glimpsed the son I remembered, curious, connected, present. Melissa remained on the porch, phone in hand, separate from this moment of family continuity. "Your grandfather would have adored Lily," I said softly. Michael nodded. "I wish he could have met her." I ran my hand over a photo of Robert teaching Michael to tie a fishing knot. "He lives on in both of you," I said, "and in this place." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I took out the draft of my new will that Patricia had emailed me and read through it one more time. In the morning, I would tell Michael and Melissa my decision. It wasn't about punishment. It was about preservation, not just of the lake house, but of the values and connections it represented. The morning arrived with a soft drizzle that dimpled the surface of the lake. I woke early, as I always did at the lake house, and made coffee in the kitchen while watching raindrops create concentric circles on the water. The house was still quiet, Michael and Melissa sleeping in after I'd heard them arguing in low voices well past midnight. I'd caught fragments: your mother's guilt trip, family legacy, investment potential, enough to understand that my subtle shifts were registering exactly as intended. In their marriage, Melissa was the practical one, always alert to financial opportunities. While Michael carried sentimental attachments, he was often too embarrassed to defend them. With my coffee, I stepped onto the covered portion of the porch and settled into the wicker chair that had been my father's favorite spot. The rain created a gentle percussion on the roof, mingling with distant thunder. I thought about what I would say to them over breakfast, how I would explain my decision without framing it as the consequence it actually was. A small sound caught my attention. Turning, I saw Lily in her little pajamas, clutching the stuffed rabbit I'd given her yesterday. She'd apparently climbed out of her portable crib, a new skill, and navigated her way to the porch door, which I'd left cracked open. "Well, good morning, early bird," I said softly. She looked at me with those serious eyes, so much like Robert's, then patted over and lifted her arms. I set my coffee aside and lifted her onto my lap, breathing in her baby scent as she settled against my chest. Together, we watched the rain, and I felt my heart expand with a love so acute it was almost painful. "Your great-grandfather built this porch so we could watch rainstorms," I told her, not caring that she couldn't understand my words. "He said there was nothing more peaceful than rain on a lake." Lily patted my hand with her tiny one, and I marveled at the perfection of her fingernails, the delicate map of veins visible beneath her fair skin. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that my decision was right. An hour later, Michael appeared, looking disheveled and surprised to find his daughter and me already deep into breakfast preparations. Lily was secured in a high chair I'd kept from Michael's childhood, happily mashing bananas while I mixed blueberry pancake batter. She was up early, I explained. We've been having a lovely time. Michael ran a hand through his hair. Sorry, we should have heard her on the monitor. No need for a monitor here. The house is small, and I was already awake. I poured batter onto the hot griddle. There's coffee in the pot. He poured himself a cup, watching me with Lily. You're good with her, he said, sounding almost surprised. I raised an eyebrow. I've had some practice with children. The tone in my voice made him look away. We both knew he'd created a narrative about me, that I was too old-fashioned, too fussy, or somehow not up to the task of modern grandparenting to justify keeping me at arm's length. Melissa appeared as I was serving the pancakes, her face carefully made up despite the early hour and casual setting. She wore designer loungewear that probably cost more than a month of my pension. Something smells good, she said, kissing Lily's head before taking a seat at the table. Ruth's blueberry pancakes, Michael informed her. They're famous around here. We ate while rain continued to fall, creating a cozy backdrop for the conversation I needed to initiate. Lily babbled happily, occasionally offering soggy bits of pancake to each of us with solemn generosity. I've made some decisions about the lake house, I said after refilling coffee cups. And about my estate in general. Michael set down his fork, suddenly alert. Melissa's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. I've decided not to sell, I continued. This place means too much to simply let it go. I saw relief wash over Michael's face, quickly followed by weariness, as he sensed there was more. Instead, I'm creating a trust, I explained. The lake house will be placed in it along with funds for its maintenance. After I'm gone, the trust will own the property, not any individual. A trust? Melissa's voice was carefully controlled. Who will manage it? The trustee will be Patricia Goldman, my attorney, until Lily turns 25. Then she'll become the trustee. I let that sink in. I hadn't named Michael or Melissa as trustees or even as contingent beneficiaries. I don't understand, Michael said slowly. Why not just leave it to us? We're Lily's parents. We can hold it for her. I took a sip of coffee. The purpose of the trust is to ensure the lake house remains in the family for generations, not to be sold or leveraged. The trust stipulates that the property must be maintained as a family gathering place. The trustee has no authority to sell it unless upkeep becomes financially impossible. That seems complicated, Melissa interjected. And potentially limiting if circumstances change. Life is unpredictable. I agreed. But some things should be preserved when possible. This place holds our family history. I want Lily to know it. And her children after her. Michael's expression was a mixture of confusion and dawning comprehension. What about the rest of your estate, Mom? The house in Connecticut, your investments. Here it was. The question I'd anticipated. My primary residence will be sold upon my death, with half the proceeds going to a scholarship fund for prospective teachers and half to Lily's education trust, which she'll access at 25. I didn't mention my retirement accounts, which I'd already quietly redirected to fund my own remaining years comfortably, including travel and experiences I'd deferred during decades of saving for a future that would now look different than I'd once planned. The silence stretched. Rain tapped against the windows. Lily smashed another piece of pancake, oblivious to the tension. I see, Michael finally said, his voice tight. Do you? I asked gently. I hope so. Because this isn't about punishment, Michael. It's about preservation of values, of connections, of what matters most. Melissa stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. Excuse me. She left the room, back rigid. Michael and I sat in silence as Lily continued her breakfast demolition. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. Is this because we didn't invite you to the birthday party? The directness of the question surprised me. No, I said that was a symptom, not the cause. This is about recognizing what's important while I still have time to protect it. Protect it from what? He challenged. From us? I reached across the table and placed my hand over his, feeling the bones that had formed inside my body all those years ago. From forgetting Michael, from the slow erosion of things that seem ordinary until they're gone. Later that afternoon, the rain stopped. We took Lily down to the shore where she delighted in splashing at the water's edge. I noticed Michael watching me as I helped his daughter collect stones, showing her how the wet ones revealed hidden colors. "You said you're planning a river cruise?" he asked. I nodded. "Next spring, Germany, Austria, Hungary, alone with my friend Patricia and possibly Helen from my book club." He looked out at the lake. "You never mentioned wanting to travel before." "You never asked," I said simply. "After your father died, everyone assumed I'd just continue, and I did. But now I'm thinking about what I want for my remaining years." Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, that I existed beyond my role as his mother. That I had desires and plans he knew nothing about because he'd never bothered to inquire. "We should head back after dinner," he said, changing the subject. "Melissa has meetings tomorrow. She can't reschedule." I nodded, having expected this. "Of course, I'll make pasta for an early dinner." As I turned to head back to the house, Michael called after me. "Mom, would it be okay if we came back in August? Maybe for a long weekend?" I smiled, not turning around so he wouldn't see the emotion on my face. "The lake house will be here," I said. "And so will I." August came and went without a visit from Michael and his family. There was a text about Melissa's work crisis, then another about Lily catching a summer cold. I recognized the excuses for what they were, a retreat into the comfortable distance they'd maintained before our 4th of July conversation. Instead of dwelling on disappointment, I focused on my plans. I finalized the trust documents with Patricia, opened a separate account for my travel fund, and began researching river cruises along the Rhine. I also started clearing out decades of accumulated possessions from my Connecticut home, a process both liberating and bittersweet. "You're really doing this," Patricia remarked one afternoon as she helped me sort through Robert's old books. We decided which ones to donate to the local library and which ones to keep for Lily when she was older. "I'm really doing this," I confirmed. "Though I'm not sure what this is exactly," Patricia laughed. "Living on your own terms, finally." It was September when Michael called, his voice carrying a forced casualness that immediately put me on alert. "Mom, we were thinking of having you over for dinner this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just us." It had been nearly 2 months since I'd seen my granddaughter. "I'd love that," I said. "Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself," he replied, then added, "Lily's been saying Gamma. Melissa thinks she might be trying to say Grandma." My heart squeezed at this tiny evidence that I existed in my granddaughter's world. "That's wonderful," I said, keeping my voice even. The dinner invitation, it turned out, had an agenda. Their house was a modern colonial in an expensive subdivision, tasteful, spacious, and somehow lacking in soul despite the carefully curated furnishings. Melissa had ordered takeout from an upscale Italian restaurant served on their wedding china as if it were homemade. Lily was genuinely excited to see me, toddling over with arms raised the moment I entered. I scooped her up, breathing in her clean baby scent, marveling at how much she'd grown in just a few months. "Gamma," she said, patting my cheek with a dimpled hand. "Yes, my darling," I whispered. "Grandma's here." Dinner was pleasant enough, with conversation carefully steered toward neutral topics, the changing leaves, an upcoming election, a new restaurant in town. It wasn't until Melissa took Lily upstairs for her bath that Michael revealed the true purpose of the evening. "Mom, we've been thinking about what you said at the lake house," he began, refilling my wine glass, "about preservation and family connections." I nodded, waiting. "Melissa and I have been talking, and we'd like to be more involved with the lake house. Maybe help with those renovations you mentioned." I took a sip of wine. "That's thoughtful. What did you have in mind?" He leaned forward. "We could contribute financially to the repairs. In exchange, maybe we could formalize our stake in the property." And there it was. The real reason for the dinner invitation. Not connection, but acquisition. "You mean co-ownership?" I asked. "Something like that. It would help us feel more invested in the place, more responsible for its future." I set down my glass. "Michael, I appreciate the offer, but that's not necessary. The trust will ensure the lake house remains in the family. His expression tightened slightly. But the trust puts Lily in charge eventually, not us. It skips a generation. It preserves the property for future generations, I corrected gently. Which is the point? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's that my heart ached. Mom, let's be practical. Melissa and I are in our prime earning years. We could really improve the place, maybe winterize it properly, add a deck, make it more usable year-round. I understood then they didn't want the lake house as it was, a simple rustic retreat that connected us to our past. They wanted to remake it in their image, turn it into something more aligned with their lifestyle and expectations. The lake house doesn't need to be improved, I said. It needs to be preserved. That's just sentimentality talking, he countered. Property is an investment. Not everything valuable is an investment, Michael. Some things are precious simply because of what they represent. Melissa returned, Lily now in pajamas. She handed the sleepy child to Michael and sat down beside him, a united front. Ruth, she began, using her professional negotiation voice, we respect your attachment to the lake house, but we also think there's a compromise that would benefit everyone. I smiled at her, seeing clearly the carefully orchestrated nature of the evening. I've already found that compromise. It's called a trust. A trust removes options, she pressed. If we faced a financial emergency, or if Lily needed something important, that asset would be locked away, unavailable. That's precisely the point, I said. Some things should be protected from short-term pressures. The lake house isn't meant to be liquidated for emergencies. It's meant to be the constant that remains when emergencies have passed. The conversation circled for another half-hour, their arguments becoming increasingly transparent. They wanted control not just of the lake house, but of my entire estate plan. They viewed my assets as eventually theirs by right and my independent decisions as a form of betrayal. Finally, as I prepared to leave, Michael made one last attempt. Mom, we're just trying to be practical about the future. Dad would have wanted things simple and straightforward. I paused at the door, Lily having fallen asleep on my shoulder during our goodbyes. I transferred her gently to Michael's arms. Your father and I discussed our wishes extensively before he died, I said quietly. He trusted me to make the right decisions, and that's what I'm doing. The drive home was peaceful. I felt none of the anger or hurt I might have expected after such a conversation. Instead, I felt clarity and a curious sense of freedom. For decades, I'd measured my choices against what would please others, my parents, my husband, my son. Now, in my 68th year, I was finally learning to trust my own judgment. The following week, I received a large manila envelope from Patricia's office. Inside were the finalized trust documents ready for my signature. Also enclosed was a separate folder containing brochures for the river cruise I'd been researching. Patricia's way of encouraging me to move forward with my plans. I signed the trust documents that evening at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd helped Michael with his homework, where Robert and I had paid bills and planned vacations, where I now sat alone, but not lonely. Each signature felt like a declaration, not of war, but of self-respect. After filing the papers away, I called the cruise line and booked my trip for the following April. Then I called Patricia. It's done, I told her. Both the trust and the cruise reservation. How do you feel? She asked. I considered the question. Peaceful, I said finally. Like I've done right by everyone, including myself. Including yourself, she repeated. That might be the most important part. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years, dreamless and deep. Whatever came next with Michael and Melissa, I had secured what mattered most. Not just the lake house itself, but what it represented. Continuity, memory, the tangible thread connecting past to future. The months after finalizing the trust were quieter than I expected. Michael's calls became less frequent, each conversation polite but strained. I was invited to Thanksgiving dinner, an invitation I accepted despite knowing it was extended more from obligation than desire. Lily was the bright spot of the day, toddling around the house, calling me Gamma and bringing me toys to admire. As winter settled over Connecticut, I began preparing for my trip. I renewed my passport, purchased sensible walking shoes, and started a small journal where I noted things I wanted to see along the Rhine. I'd never traveled internationally without Robert, and the prospect was both daunting and exhilarating. Christmas brought another obligatory family gathering, this time at my house. Michael and Melissa arrived precisely on time, bearing professionally wrapped gifts and a palpable air of restraint. Lily, now 20 months old, had no such reservations. She explored my home with uninhibited curiosity, delighting in the Christmas tree ornaments and the wind-up music box I'd placed within her reach. "We can't stay long," Melissa announced after barely an hour. "We're expected at my parents' house for dinner." I nodded, having anticipated this. "Of course, I've prepared something for you to take with you." I handed her a tin of the gingerbread cookies Michael had loved as a child. She accepted it with a tight smile. "Thank you, Ruth. That's thoughtful." As they were preparing to leave, I gave Michael his gift, a leather-bound first edition of The Old Man and the Sea, his favorite book from high school. For Melissa, I'd chosen a cashmere scarf in a shade that complemented her coloring. Their gifts to me were expensive but impersonal, a digital photo frame and a gift certificate to a department store. For Lily, I'd saved something special, a child-sized rocking chair that had belonged to my mother, carefully restored and painted a cheerful yellow. "It's too big to take today," I explained as Lily climbed onto it immediately. "I'll keep it here for when she visits." I saw the brief flicker in Michael's eyes, the recognition that I was creating reasons for them to return, establishing my home as a place where Lily had her own special belongings. After they left, I sat in my quiet house, Christmas lights twinkling, and felt not loneliness, but anticipation. The holidays would pass, winter would loosen its grip, and spring would arrive with my journey. I was moving forward, even if my relationship with my son seemed frozen in an uneasy truce. January brought heavy snow and a surprising phone call from Melissa. "Ruth, I hope I'm not disturbing you." Her voice had an unfamiliar hesitancy. "Not at all," I replied, genuinely curious about the reason for her call. "I'm calling because, well, we have a situation. My mother was supposed to watch Lily next Wednesday while Michael and I attend an important dinner, but she's come down with the flu. I know it's last minute, but would you be available?" I suppressed a smile at being the backup childcare option. "I'd be happy to. Would you like to bring Lily here? Or shall I come to your house?" Her relief was audible. "Our house would be easier if that works for you. We'd need to leave around 6 and should be back by 10 or 11. "That sounds perfectly manageable," I assured her. The following Wednesday, I arrived at their house early, bringing a bag of activities and books for Lily. Melissa answered the door, looking elegant in a black cocktail dress, her manner brisk and professional, even in this domestic setting. "Thank you for doing this," she said, ushering me in. "Lily's just finishing dinner. All the emergency numbers are on the fridge, and I've written out her bedtime routine." I nodded, resisting the urge to remind her that I had, in fact, successfully raised a child to adulthood. "We'll be fine," I said instead. Michael appeared, adjusting his tie. He looked so much like Robert in that moment that my breath caught. "Mom, thanks for the save. This dinner is pretty crucial for a case I'm working on." "Happy to help," I said. "Now go, both of you. Lily and I will have a wonderful time." Once they left, the house seemed to exhale. Lily and I settled into an evening of play, stories, and quiet connection. I followed Melissa's detailed bedtime instructions but added my own touch, a lullaby I'd sung to Michael and my mother had sung to me. As Lily drifted to sleep, her small hand curled around my finger, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was what mattered, these moments of genuine connection across generations. I was reading in their living room when they returned earlier than expected. Melissa looked tense and Michael's expression was carefully neutral. "How did it go?" I asked, closing my book. "Fine," Melissa replied curtly, removing her earrings. "How is Lily?" "Perfect. She went asleep right on schedule." Michael poured himself a drink from their bar cabinet. "Can I get you anything, Mom?" I shook my head. I should be heading home. As I gathered my things, Michael followed me to the door. Thanks again for tonight, he said, then hesitated. I heard you're going to Europe in the spring. I paused, surprised. Yes, a river cruise in April. How did you know? Patricia mentioned it when I called her office about another matter, he said, his tone casual in a way that immediately made me suspicious. I see, I replied, wondering what other matter had prompted him to contact my attorney. It's something I've always wanted to do. He nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. Well, have a good trip. The drive home that night was concerning. Michael contacting Patricia could only mean he was seeking some sort of legal angle regarding my decisions. The trust was irrevocable, but that wouldn't stop him from trying to find a loophole or apply pressure in some way. The next morning, I called Patricia directly. Michael contacted you? I asked after explaining my concerns. Yes, she confirmed, validating my suspicions.
He did.
He wanted to know if there was any way to modify the trust, claiming he had concerns about the property management, and you told him that the terms are set as per your wishes, Ruth. He seemed to think I might be more flexible given our friendship. I made it clear my responsibility is to execute your directives, not negotiate them. I thanked her and hung up, feeling a curious mixture of sadness and resolve. My son was still treating my decisions as obstacles to overcome rather than choices to respect. February brought another surprising development. I received a text message from Melissa asking if I'd be willing to watch Lily again, this time for a full day, while they attended a wedding. Despite my suspicions about their motives, I agreed immediately. A day with my granddaughter was precious, regardless of the circumstances. When I arrived that Saturday morning, Lily ran to me with unrestrained joy, chattering about the toys she wanted to show me. Michael and Melissa left quickly, Melissa's instructions even more detailed than before. It was during Lily's nap that I noticed the papers on Michael's home office desk. I wasn't snooping. The door was open and I passed by on my way to the kitchen, but the words Blackwood Family Trust caught my eye. They were legal documents regarding a consultation with another attorney about challenging the trust I'd established. My hands trembled as I stepped away, not wanting to invade their privacy further, but shaken by the confirmation of my fears. When they returned that evening, I maintained a calm exterior, discussing Lily's day and the sweet moments we'd shared. But as I drove home, I felt a cold certainty. The polite truce was merely a facade. Behind it, plans were being made to undo everything I'd put in place. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote 2 letters. One to Patricia, outlining what I'd seen and asking her to be vigilant. The second was to Michael, not to be sent yet, but to be kept with my important papers. In it, I explained my choices not in legal terms, but as a mother speaking to her son about legacy, respect, and the difference between inheritance and entitlement. Whether he would ever read it with an open heart, I couldn't know. But writing it brought me peace. March arrived with alternating snow and thaw, the world caught between seasons, much like my relationship with Michael. We maintained our polite distance, connected primarily through brief text messages and photos of Lily he occasionally sent. Each picture showed her growing, changing, her personality emerging in bright smiles and serious contemplation. As my departure date for Europe approached, I found myself increasingly occupied with preparations. I hired a service to check on my house while I was away, arranged for my neighbor to collect my mail, and packed with careful consideration of European spring weather. These practical tasks anchored me during a time when much else in my life felt uncertain. 3 weeks before my trip, my doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. Opening it, I found Michael standing alone on my porch, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "Michael," I said, surprised. "Come in. Is everything all right?" He stepped inside, declining my offer to take his coat. "I can't stay long. Melissa and Lily are waiting in the car." I glanced past him to see their BMW idling in my driveway. "They're welcome to come in." "Melissa has errands to run," he said vaguely. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." We moved to the living room where he remained standing while I sat. "I know about your trip," he began. "And I understand you'll be gone for 2 weeks." I nodded. 15 days.
Yes.
The cruise itself is 12 days plus travel time. He shifted his weight. Who's handling your affairs while you're gone? Financial matters, health decisions, that sort of thing. The question seemed loaded, and I answered carefully. Patricia has my power of attorney, both medical and financial, should anything arise. But I don't anticipate any issues. Patricia, he repeated, his tone flat. Not your son, Michael. Patricia is my attorney. She's familiar with all my accounts and wishes. It's a practical arrangement. His jaw tightened. It feels like you don't trust me. There it was. The heart of the matter. I considered deflecting, offering reassurances that would smooth the moment, but solve nothing. Instead, I chose honesty. Trust has to go both ways, I said gently. You went behind my back to challenge the trust one created. His expression flickered with surprise, then defensiveness. You went through my papers. I saw them on your desk when I was watching Lily. I wasn't snooping, but I saw enough. He ran a hand through his hair. We were exploring options, getting information, options to undo my decisions. I clarified, decisions I made carefully and with great thought. Mom, you're making choices that affect our whole family without consulting us. The lake house, your estate. These things impact all of us. I studied my son's face, seeing the boy he had been and the man he'd become. Intelligent, ambitious, accustomed to managing situations to his advantage. They're my choices to make, Michael. My life, my property, my legacy. And after you're gone, what then? Lily won't be able to access anything until she's 25. That's 2 decades away. That's the point of a trust, I explained patiently. To preserve assets until the beneficiary is mature enough to manage them responsibly. His eyes narrowed slightly. And you don't think Melissa and I are responsible enough? The question hung between us. I could have lied, could have assured him this wasn't about my confidence in him. But too much had gone unspoken between us for too long. I think you and Melissa see these assets differently than I do, I said carefully. You see investments, liquidity, opportunities. I see history, continuity, legacy. That's not fair, he protested. We care about those things too. Do you? I asked softly. When was the last time you took Lily to the lake house? When was the last time you shared family stories with her? When was the last time you invited me to be part of her life in a meaningful way? He had no immediate answer, which was answer enough. I'm not punishing you, Michael, I continued. I'm protecting something precious, not from you, but from the rush of modern life that makes it so easy to sacrifice the permanent on the altar of the immediate. He looked away, his expression a mixture of frustration and something harder to identify. Perhaps recognition. We have different values, different priorities. Yes, I agreed. And that's okay. But my values and priorities get to guide my decisions, just as yours guide yours. He moved toward the door, our conversation clearly over in his mind. I should go. Melissa's waiting. I followed him to the entry. Michael, I said as he reached for the doorknob. I love you. That hasn't changed. He paused, turning back to me. Love should come with trust. It does, I said. I trust you to be exactly who you are. I just don't confuse who you are with who I am. After he left, I watched through the window as he returned to his car. Through the windshield, I could see Lily in her car seat, waving her stuffed animal. Melissa sat rigidly in the passenger seat, not looking toward my house. They pulled away without a backward glance. That evening, I called Patricia to update her on the conversation. He's still looking for ways to challenge the trust, I told her. He won't find any, she assured me. We made sure of that. Ruth, are you sure you want to go on this trip with things so tense? More sure than ever, I replied. This isn't just about seeing Europe. It's about living my life forward, not in suspended animation, waiting for approval that may never come. The next 2 weeks passed quickly. I finished packing, confirmed all my arrangements, and spent a day at the lake house, making sure everything was in order for the spring. While there, I wrote a letter to Lily to be given to her on her 18th birthday, explaining the history of the lake house and why I had chosen to preserve it for her. I sealed it and added it to the box of family papers in the attic. The day before my departure, I received an unexpected text from Melissa. "Have a safe trip. Lily made something for you." Attached was a photo of a finger painting, a riot of colors with indecipherable shapes that warmed my heart nonetheless. I replied with thanks and an impulsive invitation. "Would you like to bring her by before I leave? I'd love to see her." The response came an hour later. "Sorry, she has a play date this afternoon. Next time." Next time. The perpetual deferral of connection pushed always into a future that never quite arrived. I set my phone aside and finished my final preparations. That night, I sat on my patio despite the chill, looking up at the stars Robert and I had often admired together. Am I doing the right thing? I asked the silence, not expecting an answer, but needing to voice the question. The stars offered no judgment, no validation, just their ancient light, constant, reliable, beyond the reach of human complications. In their quiet presence, I found my own answer. Yes. Finally, after a lifetime of accommodation, I was doing right by myself while still honoring my deepest values. Tomorrow, I would board a plane, cross an ocean, and begin an adventure I deferred for decades. Whatever awaited me upon my return, resolution or continued tension, I would face it with the clarity and strength I'd reclaimed. The European air felt different somehow, lighter, filled with possibilities. For 15 days, I moved through ancient cities along the Rhine, absorbing history, beauty, and the simple joy of discovery. Patricia and Helen proved to be ideal traveling companions, each of us comfortable with silence or conversation as the moment dictated. In a small cafe in Strasbourg, Patricia raised her glass of local wine. To Ruth, she toasted, who reminded us all that life isn't over until we decide it is. I smiled, feeling a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. I should have done this long ago. You're doing it now, Helen pointed out. That's what matters. During those 2 weeks, I thought of Michael and Lily often, but not with the ache that had become familiar. Instead, I found myself hoping that someday my son might understand what I was trying to preserve, not just property but perspective, the understanding that life is meant to be lived fully at every stage, not merely endured in the shadow of others' expectations. I sent postcards to Lily from each city we visited. Simple messages about the sights and people, storing memories she was too young to fully appreciate now but might treasure later. To Michael and Melissa, I sent a single text with a photo of me standing beside the Rhine, simply captioned, "Greetings from Germany. All is well." Melissa replied with a polite, "Looks lovely," and a photo of Lily playing in their backyard. Michael didn't respond at all. The return flight to New York gave me time to prepare mentally for whatever awaited me at home. I'd experienced something profound during my journey, not just the pleasure of travel, but the deep satisfaction of honoring my own desires after decades of putting others first. Patricia squeezed my hand as our plane began its descent. Ready to go back to real life? This was real life, too, I reminded her. Just a different chapter. My house welcomed me with familiar silence. I unpacked, sorted through accumulated mail, and slept deeply in my own bed. The next morning, I called Michael, wanting to reconnect after my absence. "Mom, hey," he answered, his voice distracted. "You're back." "Just got in yesterday," I confirmed. "How are you all? How's Lily?" "We're fine." "Busy." "Lily's good. Growing fast." The conversation remained surface level despite my attempts to share experiences from my trip. After a few minutes, he begged off, citing a work meeting. "I'd love to see you all soon," I said before he could hang up. "Perhaps this weekend? Let me check with Melissa and get back to you." He didn't get back to me. 3 days passed, then a week. I considered calling again, but held back, unwilling to force a connection that needed to grow naturally or not at all. Instead, I focused on my own life. I joined a book club at the local library, accepted an invitation to teach a creative writing workshop for seniors at the community center, and began sorting through decades of photos to create albums, one for myself and eventually one for Lily. Spring yielded to early summer, the days lengthening as nature burst into vibrant life. I spent weekends at the lake house, supervising the roof repairs I'd finally arranged, and planting a small garden near the porch. During one such weekend, Patricia joined me, helping to clear winter debris from the property. "Have you heard from Michael?" she asked as we raked leaves from beneath the old oak tree. "Not directly," I admitted. He responds to my texts about Lily with one-word answers or emojis. Very teenage-like for a man in his 40s. She leaned on her rake. "He's still angry." "Yes, but I think it's evolving from anger about what I've done to anger about what it represents. The realization that I'm not just an extension of him and his needs." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. That's a difficult lesson for many adult children. They want their parents to remain static, available but undemanding. "Well," I said, resuming my raking, "I've decided to be a very poor example of that expectation." It was Memorial Day weekend when everything changed. I was preparing for another solitary holiday at the lake house when my phone rang with Michael's number. "Mom," he said, his voice tight. "We need to talk." My heart sank. "What's happened?" "Nothing's happened," he replied. "But things can't continue like this. The silence, the distance. It's not good for anyone, especially Lily." I agreed cautiously, surprised by this sudden concern for family cohesion. "We're coming to the lake house tomorrow," he continued. "All three of us, if that's all right with you." "Of course," I said, trying to keep the surprise from my voice. "I'll be here." After we hung up, I sat on the porch, watching the lake ripple under a gentle breeze, wondering what had prompted this sudden overture. Was it genuine reconciliation, or another attempt to change my mind about the trust? I prepared for their visit with both hope and weariness. I made a blueberry pie, Michael's favorite, and set up the portable crib in the small bedroom for Lily. Whatever their motivation, seeing my granddaughter was worth navigating difficult conversations. They arrived mid-morning, Lily immediately brightening at the sight of me. "Gamma," she called, struggling to get out of her car seat as Michael unbuckled her. I gathered her into my arms. This child who carried my blood and Robert's, this small person who knew nothing of trusts or estates or adult complications. "Hello, my darling," I murmured into her hair. "I've missed you so much." Melissa nodded a greeting, her expression carefully neutral as she carried bags into the house. Michael stood awkwardly beside the car. "The place looks good," he commented. "You got the roof fixed. Just finished last week," I confirmed.
Come in.
"I've made coffee." Inside, as Lily explored the house with the fearless curiosity of a 2-year-old, the three adults engaged in careful small talk. I answered questions about my European trip. They shared anecdotes about Lily's latest milestones, all of us avoiding the unspoken tension until Lily went down for her nap. Finally, Michael cleared his throat. "Mom, we've been doing a lot of thinking since you've been gone." I nodded, waiting. "I consulted another attorney about the trust," he admitted. "I was looking for ways to change it, to have more control." "I know," I said simply. He looked surprised, then continued. "He told me the same thing Patricia did, that it's ironclad, that you have every right to dispose of your property as you see fit." I nodded again. "That's true." "At first, I was angry," he continued. "It felt like you didn't trust us, like you were punishing us for not being the family you wanted." "That was never my intention," I said softly. "I know that now," he acknowledged. "But it took me time to see it." He glanced at Melissa, who gave him a small nod. "What really changed things was something Lily said." "What was that?" I asked, curious. "She asked when we were going to Gamma's lake. Not the lake house, not the lake, but Gamma's lake. She remembered it, Mom. She remembered being here with you." Something warm unfurled in my chest. Children often remember more than we give them credit for. "It made me realize what you've been trying to tell me," Michael continued. "That this place isn't just property. It's connection memory." "Yes," I said simply. "We won't fight the trust," he said. "I wanted you to know that. We respect your decision." He hesitated. "And we like to start spending more time here with you, as a family." I looked at Melissa, trying to gauge her sincerity. She met my gaze directly. "It's important for Lily," she said. "And I may have misjudged some things." It wasn't a full apology or a complete surrender, but it was an opening, a crack in the wall of separation that had grown between us. "I'd like that very much," I said. Later, after Lily woke from her nap, the four of us walked down to the lake. My granddaughter held my hand on one side and her father's on the other, forming a chain of connection across generations. She squealed with delight as tiny waves lapped at her toes. The same lake that had cooled Michael's childhood summers was now introducing itself to his daughter. As the sun began to set, casting long golden rays across the water, I sat on the dock, watching Michael teach Lily how to skip stones, the same lesson his father had taught him 35 years earlier. Melissa sat beside me, both of us quiet in the beauty of the moment. "He's booked us here for 2 weeks in July," she said finally, "and a long weekend each month through the fall." I turned to her, surprised. "That's wonderful." She nodded, still looking at her husband and daughter. "This place does have something special. I see that now." Understanding dawned gradually, like the slow lightening of the sky before sunrise. My son and his wife hadn't completely changed, nor had I. We were still different people with different values. But in the space created by my standing firm, by my refusal to bend my life to accommodate their expectations, a new respect had begun to grow. It wasn't a perfect resolution, tied with a neat bow. It was messy, human, and real, a beginning rather than an ending. That night, after they'd gone to bed in the downstairs bedroom, I sat alone on the porch, listening to the familiar symphony of lake sounds, water lapping at the shore, crickets in the grass, the occasional splash of a fish jumping. "We did it, Robert," I whispered to the stars. "We preserved what matters." The breeze lifted my hair gently, almost like a loving hand. I smiled, feeling neither alone nor lonely, but perfectly, completely present in my own life at last. If my story of courage and boundaries touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Every experience I share comes straight from my heart to yours. And your support means the world to me.